saying they're stressed. And I said, well, I don't know that we're allowed to be stressed. Not like doctors, not like firefighters, police officers. There are so many jobs, I suppose, that one would regard as stressful. But isn't it to do with how we manage it? I've always viewed stress a bit like the backache problem. Because when somebody... Can you phone up your boss and say, I'm not coming into work today because I'm stressed? Is that an acceptable? If you are an employer, tell me how you help your employees cope with stress. If you recognise it as something that may well cost an awful lot of money. If we're talking about this number of people, 1 in 3 people feeling stressed at work, imagine the days they take off. Imagine how much that cost the industries that we have here in our great city. But I do know it's a problem. I certainly know if I get stressed, skin just goes. I've seen people, hair falls out. I've seen people, they can't get up, they can't do anything. I know there is a thing called stress. Yeah, I do. But what's interesting is what people get stressed about. And what some people get stressed about, other people just think, well, I can't do anything about it. What's the point in worrying about it? And I think, I wish I could do that. So stress in the workplace, specifically in the workplace, but more generally stress. Now, if somebody phones up and says, I'm off sick, I've been signed off with stress, be honest with me now. How do you view it? Your workplace, do you think, oh, yeah, there you go. Somebody says they've got backache. What do you think? Have you ever been stressed? Have you had it? How did it manifest? How did you recognise what it was? And did people take it seriously? Because we've been talking about it today again, I say, because stress has come up a few times over the last few months, hasn't it? And people, to my mind, just don't really take it seriously. It's an excuse. You want a few days off. You're making it up. So I'd love to hear the other side. So stress is on our agenda today, and I look forward to hearing from you. I'll give you those numbers again, shall I? They are 020 722 42000. You can text 81333. Start your message with the word London. Emails to eddie.nestor@bbc.co.uk. Twitter and Facebook are also available. Now, a new report has revealed that more than 1 in 3 UK employees believe that they are suffering from anxiety, depression or stress in the workplace. The study by consultancy PwC also found that nearly a quarter of those polled felt their organisation didn't really take employee well-being seriously. Maybe that's something you can feed on. Our reporter Valley Fontaine has been asking Londoners how they deal with stress at work.
When in your life have you ever felt that your work was just stressing you out to the point where you thought, look, I can't go in?
Hardly ever. I'm okay at work.
You enjoy your job?
Yes. Nobody's hassling us. I mean, we get the time we need to do the stuff that we have to do.
Stress at work, is it something that impacts on your life?
Yes. Just too busy, everybody's chasing, nobody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and just, I don't know, actually.
How stressful is your job?
Fine. You've got to take it easy, ain't you?
And if people say to you they feel stressed, how do you take that?
In the wrong job. When they're in the wrong job, aren't they?
I know it exists, but it doesn't apply to me. So I deal with it, I overcome them by way of doing meditation and spiritual exercise rather than, going through all the hassle of consultation and counselors. Because they themselves have their own stress. So who deal with their stress then?
Stress at work.
I do suffer it. I don't know, panic. Go into panic mode.
And have you ever had to ring up and say, look, I can't come in today because I'm really feeling stressed, and how was it received?
I haven't had to ring up because of that, no. I just would panic about going into work.
How do you deal with stress at work?
I go out walking and shopping, basically.
And that does it?
At lunchtime, yeah.
Stress. I have a very stressful job, so I don't really... No, nothing really.
You feel like you're not dealing with it?
I don't do anything particularly to deal with it, no.
If you rang in and said, look, I can't come in today, I'm feeling really stressed, or how do you think they would respond? You're laughing.
I wouldn't call in and say that.
Because?
It's just your job. This is part of the job, really, isn't it?
That'd be good to have a look at it. I'm looking up the definition of stress here. I suppose I don't have to. I'm in a lucky position where I could just ask my guest here. Neil Shah, Chief De-Stressing Officer at the Stress Management Society, helping companies and big and small companies, those who actually do recognise they have a mental health problem affecting their staff. Afternoon to you, Neil. Is Neil there?
Yes, hello.
Good afternoon to you, Neil.
How are you?
Yeah, I mean, interesting listening to that Vox Pop there.
Yeah.
Because people are talking about stress at work as though the work itself is the thing that causes stress. You know, it can be the journey, it can be the heat or the lack of it, it can be the people you're working with, it can be one particular person, it can be so many things, can't it?
Absolutely. Now, what we've got to bear in mind is if we start thinking about stress, not so much from a medical or physiological perspective, we think about it from an engineering perspective. Let's say you've got a bridge, Tower Bridge, for example. We've got a whole load of red double-decker buses, some lorries, some cruise ships, and Boeing 747s. It doesn't matter how well constructed the bridge is. Every bridge on the planet, if enough pressure is applied for long enough, it will ultimately collapse. Now, people are exactly the same. It doesn't matter how mentally tough, how resilient you are, how broad your shoulders are. If I keep putting enough pressure and demand on you as a person, whether that's home, whether that's financial, whether that's relationship, whether that's work, whether that's the commute, whatever it is, health, if I keep going and keep putting more pressure, more demand, more load on your personal bridge, every single person on the planet eventually will get to the point where their bridge will collapse.
It's a lovely example, but it's not working here because I'm not a bridge. and I'm a thinking, feeling, caring human being and very different to you. And what might cause you stress wouldn't cause me and vice versa. You know that it isn't an exact science in the way that I suppose engineering is.
Well, to a degree, but it doesn't matter what the load is. Now, as I said, like there could be a day where you cope very well with one sort of challenge in your life, but the next day, due to all of the other things that have accumulated on your bridge, that person that cuts you up on the way home from work, because you've had all of that stuff that's accumulated and your bridge is already starting to bar and buckle, you will react in a way that you wouldn't if your bridge was coping. So, from that perspective, yeah, I agree. It's not an exact science, and people will vary from day to day, and it will vary from person to person. But ultimately, we all have a finite capacity to cope with pressure and demand in our lives.
Do you recognise stress as a mental health challenge?
It can lead to mental health challenges, but in and of itself? In and of itself, no.
Well, because what's interesting to me is the way you deal with stress, and I've seen it, honestly. I understand the way my mother reacted in various situations through my life now better than ever before because Mum worked nights, and having worked nights for a couple of years, I know what that does in terms of stress. But what's interesting to me is that when you are stressed, if you have to be off work because of it, in the same way as a mental health challenge, it's almost as though you're not coping. The system has broken down and it's a weakness in you. That's the way I think it's perceived.
You're absolutely right. It's the way it's perceived, it's the way it's diagnosed. But sadly, that's incorrect. It's not that you're broken. It's just it's like a computer that's got too many programs running. It eventually will get to the point where it won't be able to function. You need to reboot it. Now, if you're ill because you've got a cold or a flu or you've broken your leg or sprained your ankle, being at home and resting and recovering is potentially going to help you to feel better. I'm not completely convinced that actually being at home and watching daytime TV is going to make you feel better if you're stressed. We need to be proactive, and we need to be sure that people do get the support they need. Now, you're not going to get it on the NHS because it's an average an 18-week wait time to get access to counselling through the NHS. However, this is one thing that really gets me. Most employers will have support resources like employee assistance programs, OC Health, access to counselling, but it's so underutilised, and people aren't actually making use of the support that's available.
Because you only need it if you are weak. That's the perception. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah,
the perception
right.
is what stops you getting better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the perception that I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, I'm weak, I can't cope, which is why men in particular are the ones that suffer the most. That more men suffer from mental health challenges than women do. They're the ones that are more likely to actually go on and take their own lives. It's the main cause of death in man under the age of 45, and this is because basically we're resistant to being able to even admit that we're experiencing stress because of all the negative connotations associated.
Because it isn't manly. Haven't you got it yet, Neil? It's not manly. The testosterone determines that I am the hunter provider and I should be able to cope with any situation, any challenge that comes before me. And if I can't, it's a weakness in me.
And sadly, that perception that it's a weakness is what's, resulting in the challenge that we're facing today in modern society, where, as I said, it's scary for me to think that it's the main cause of death in a young man today, is they're taking their own life because they can't cope with the pressure and demands of modern life. The emotional pain they're experiencing is so great, they'll choose the ultimate permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Okay.
We need to get better
but
at
is
talking about
it not about compartmentalizing it, about what you do, where you do it, how you do it, and what it means to you?
Again, as with everybody being affected by the issues that cause us stress in a different way, the way that we deal with it has to be different. I don't think there is, a one-size-fits-all solution. For some, it could be sort of having some kind of physical outlet through sport. For others, it could be sort of having sort of mindfulness activities or meditation. Other people, it could be like literally looking at how they can restructure the load on their bridge by maybe delegating or offloading or prioritizing their workload. It could be as simple as being able to talk about it, being able to talk to either a professional or a friend and being able to get things off your chest. As they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. I think it's really important that we do find strategies that work for us, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you talk about strategies that might work for us. You see, quite a lot of the time, I would get stressed by a situation that I have caused myself. So it kind of compounds itself because I'm angry and frustrated with something I've done, or in my case, usually something I have said, which may well have caused anxiety around me. But how do you teach somebody to cope with it if they don't recognise it?
Well, the first thing to bear in mind is perception is reality. If you think a situation is stressful and you can't cope, you're absolutely correct. Your subconscious mind cannot differentiate between what is real and what is perceived. Now, very few of us are facing actual threats. We're not being attacked by saber-toothed tigers on the way home. We've not got rabid animals chasing us down the street. So a lot of the stress we're experiencing isn't real in the sense that it's stuff that we're concerned about that might happen in the future or things that have happened in the past. Now, actually bringing ourselves back into the moment and being, present in the reality of the moment is something that's a really sort of
but you're identifying a nice easy one, aren't you? What about the people you drive with and they seem to get angry at every single thing? You've driven with people like that. You may well be one yourself, Neil.
Yeah, now, to be honest, I cycle to work and I don't spend a lot of time driving and I avoid it.
Well, then you know stress.
For that reason.
Then you know stress if you ride into work.
Well, we're in West London. I drive through ride through fields and countryside. So again, it's not something I experience a huge amount. But having been around people that do react, disproportionately to situations they're experiencing, often what I find is, getting to know them and speaking to them, it's not what's happening. It's not the fact that I'm in a car and stuck in a traffic jam. It's the fact that they have poor techniques to cope with stress in general, and it's compounding. So there's stuff that they're thinking about, things they're concerned about.
Give me an example in the car stuff.
It could be like, let's say you're driving to work, but you're tired because you haven't slept well, because you had a long day at work. Now, you're already starting with a weak bridge. Your bridge is already bowing and buckling.
You're not moving away from this bridge, are you?
Yeah, for me, it's a very simple way to kind of get your head around how we end up getting overloaded, because ultimately right now what you're talking about is the drive. Now, it's not just the drive. You cannot isolate that experience, because every experience you have in life, whether at work or at home, personal or professional life, it all ends up in the same place. It all ends up putting pressure on the same bridge. So again, for you to kind of look at just the driving experience, we cannot look at that in isolation, because that person is not just thinking about the drive. That is not the only thing that they have on their radar. They've probably got a whole load of other things that are putting pressure on them at that precise moment, and the drive is kind of the outlet where they're reacting. Or sometimes people come home and the kids have not done their homework, or the dog's chewed the remote control and they end up losing it. And it's not what's happening in front of them. It's the fact that they've been compounding the stress that they've been experiencing through the course of the day, and that ends up being, what ends up receiving the brunt of their state.
And just finally, if somebody is stressed at work, what kind of help and advice can you offer?
Well, the first thing is recognize the problem. People approach our organization looking for the solution, but they don't know sort of how it's impacting us. Now, again, within an organization, make sure you understand how it's affecting your workforce, culturally, commercially. From a risk management perspective, how exposed we are. If you're an individual that's concerned, start thinking about, so how does stress affect me? What are the causes? What are the things that are putting load on my bridge? Of that, what can I start to alleviate or offload? Or what can I do to start strengthening my bridge? And actually, many different things that we can do to strengthen our bridge, whether that's kind of exercise or taking time out or some kind of building resilience techniques. There's a whole variety of different things that you can do, and that's very much why we set up our organisation as a way of being able to provide advice, support and guidance to ensure people understand what are the best, most effective ways to be able to build resilience to cope with the ever-increasing demands of modern life.
Neil, thank you very much. Neil Shah, Chief De-stressing officer, please excuse me, at the Stress Management Society. I suppose Neil was talking more about how you would help yourself. A lot of this, I would imagine, has to come on to the employer. If 1 in 3 people are feeling stressed at work, imagine what that does to productivity. Let's have a chat, shall we?